Hello, welcome to my channel. My name's Colton, and today we're going to be talking about 10 really awesome cars that just didn't sell when they were new for whatever reason it might be. Now, it might not seem like it as someone who has owned this Mustang and otherwise has owned a Subaru WRX and a Nissan 350Z, all of which are very popular cars that you can find pretty much anywhere, you know, like in a city, out in the country, ditches, whatever. And so you might not think that I'd be one who really enjoys weird cars, but I actually love weird cars and I would love to build maybe even some of these on this list here in the future. I'm gonna talk about 10 very awesome cars that are unfortunately sometimes hard to find anymore because they just were not very appreciated and didn't sell very well when they were new. You know, why they didn't sell well when they were new, it could be a lot of different reasons. Maybe they had a poor marketing campaign, maybe they were slightly overpriced for what they were, it was just a bad time in the market, all the dead bodies in the trunk, I don't know. But nowadays, you can find these sometimes for fairly affordable, and they are super duper cool, and I guarantee you that in the future, some of these will have a lot more street cred than they did when they were new, or even now. This list is not really in any particular order, but I guess I'll go from 10 to 1 because that sounds trendy. Number 10 is the Plymouth Prowler. The Plymouth Prowler is a very, very cool car. And you know, everyone has their theories for why it didn't sell particularly well. It's very cool looking, but it's very polarizing looking, absolutely. However, it is one of the few examples in history of when a concept car was released and then the car that made its production looked pretty much identically the same as the concept car. Why did that take me so long to think of? And hear me out, I know it only comes with a V6 and it only comes automatic. However, I would argue that actually perfectly suits the overall attitude of the car. That suits what the car is for. The car, although being open-wheeled, was never supposed to be a Formula 1 car. It's not a radical, it's a Prowler. It's meant to be a modern interpretation of a modified old 30s, 40s hot rod, or whatever it might be. Maybe even earlier than that. I'm just spitballing here. And I think that it fits that 100% perfectly. And the power plant that's in it is still decently strong. It's not a super heavy vehicle, it's not a super powerful vehicle, but hey, it's a very cool vehicle. Nowadays, they're getting a little bit more expensive and they're kind of hard to find, but if you can find one and you love the look, then it might be worth it because I guarantee you they're going to continue going up in value. Number 9 on this list is the Chevy SS. When I say the Chevy SS, I mean the SS, not the SS anything. Just the Chevy SS. This was based on a Holden Commodore and it is a super duper cool car. You could also include like the G8 in this sort of same category as the SS. They both were a General Motors rear wheel drive V8 sedan. The G8 did come with a 6-cylinder, but regardless, it's an LS power plant, and with the G8 GXP and the one we're actually talking about, the Chevy SS, you could get it with a 6-speed manual, which is super duper cool. They have over 400 horsepower. They are super duper cool, super reliable. I think they're very good looking. I understand they're very understated, but if you're looking for a sedan that's not super showy, but has a lot of power and is super fun to drive, I think the Chevy SS is, I mean, it hits the nail on the head. I get that it wasn't as attractive as a lot of other options that were sort of in the same category in the market, and so it didn't really sell well, but nowadays, if you can find one for a good price, then I think that that would be awesome. However, I don't think that they really have depreciated that much all in all, so I'm not 100% sure how easy it is to find them for cheap, but even if you're paying practically new prices, I still think it's worth it. They're a great car and they're still decently affordable. Number 8 on this list is the Chevy SSR. Okay, I get it. It's also really weird looking. Why does it look like that? No one knows, not even Chevy. I think a little kid drew a picture and they just were like, yeah, whatever, we haven't thought of a design yet, we need to get this to market last week, so let's just go with that design. And let's face it, still looks better than the Tesla Cybertruck, but honestly, this thing is super duper cool, and if you get, I think it's literally the 2nd year of production forward, you could get an LS2 in them, which is awesome, and it's essentially a convertible, which is cool. It has a truck bed, which is useful, and arguably, it actually looks kind of cool. It also is very retro. It's very odd, and I get that it looks dated. It's very of its time retro, if you know what I mean. But they're super cool. They have great performance out of the box, and because it's an LS engine, there's great performance potential, just like the Chevy SS, and I think that these things need more love. They're not as cheap as some other cars on this list, but you can occasionally find them for fairly good prices, and you can find them in purple, and as far as I'm concerned, that's a win. Number 7 on this list is the Ford Contour SVT. These things have never gotten that much love, but I think they're actually really cool. The Contour was kind of Ford's attempt at making a world car. It didn't really work, and there's good reason for that. It's not that great of a car. It might be crap, but it is very fast crap, however. Very fast is kind of an exaggeration for modern day, but when they came out, getting 200 horsepower out of a 2.5 liter V6 was very impressive. They sound great, and that's the same power you get out of a first generation BRZ, except for it's in a 4-door sedan, which is cool. Styling of the Contour SVT is very dated. I would argue it's a decent looking car overall. It's not beautiful, but there's some fairly tasteful aftermarket aesthetic mods you can do for them. And mostly what I like about it is it flies so far under the radar. Nobody that doesn't know about the Ford Contour SVT is gonna look at it and go, that's a fast car, and to me that's what's cool about it. No, it's not gonna be faster than most modern day minivans. Neither is a lot of cars that people consider fast, which is kind of sad. But it's a cool car, and they can still be found for very cheap. They are getting much, much harder to find, however. So, strike while you still can. Number 6 is the Cadillac XLR, and especially the Cadillac XLR-V. What is the XLR? It's essentially a C5 Corvette. I say C5, it might actually be C6. I can't remember off the top of my head. I want to say it was still on the C5 platform, but the C5 and C6 are actually very similar. So, it was a whatever, 5 or 6, a C5.5 Corvette. It was essentially supposed to be the more old man golf course focused Corvette. It had a nicer interior. This was still mid-2000s GM though, so nicer interior is kind of not. Styling of the Cadillac XLR is a lot more jagged than the Corvettes of the era, which if you don't like the very smooth look of the C5.5 Corvette, then maybe you would appreciate the looks of the XLR and XLR-V a little bit more. As far as engines go, they come with either the Northstar or a supercharged Northstar engine, which I know is a scary thought, but Northstars can be okay. I better be careful what I'm saying. I'm gonna get lit up in the comments if I'm not careful. If you're okay with taking the risk of a Northstar engine, just remember to keep oil in it, and if it's not leaking oil, it probably means it doesn't have any. Let's move on to the next option. The next car on the list is the 04 to 06 Pontiac GTO. I love 04 to 06 Pontiac GTOs. I considered getting one before I bought my Mustang. It's a great platform. It is essentially a Holden Monaro with a different front bumper and different badges. That's it. The 04 comes with a LS1 with 350 horsepower at the crank. The 05 and 06 come with the LS2 with 400 horsepower at the crank. They weigh roughly 3,600, 3,700 pounds, something around there. And they are very good performance bargains for what they are. You can still find them for decently affordable. However, the affordable ones are either getting crappier or just getting more expensive in general. So again, this is one of those cars where I'd say if you're interested in one of them, I would strike while you still can, because I don't know how long it's still gonna be possible to find a nice 04 to 06 GTO for any sort of decent price whatsoever. But they're a great car. LS2 is a fantastic engine platform. T56 transmission, also fantastic, super strong. Not everyone's favorite shifting transmission, but hey, it's a strong transmission. Please shut up. I have an MT82. You don't know what it's like. But hey, I think they're also good looking. I understand they were dated for the time. You gotta understand that that car was designed in like 1998, 1999 for the Australian market, and was still, it was basically at the end of its model life, and really needed a refresh by the time it came to America. I understand that. I understand it wasn't what people were expecting when it comes to the GTO name. Should they have used the GTO name? I don't know. It's arguable. Performance-wise, I absolutely think it lives up to the old GTOs. Styling-wise, I get that it's not everyone's taste, and it pretty much looks like a Grand Prix, but hey, the Grand Prix is not a bad-looking car. But hey, this is a car that I think is fantastic. If you want a fast car for cheap, that is a very solid choice. Now we're gonna get into the really weird ones. Previously, up to this point, they've been weird, but a lot of people know about these. Not everyone is gonna know about these last four, and I like all of them. Number 4 is the Saab 9.3 Viggen. The Saab 9.3 Viggen is interesting. This is actually a 150 plus mile per hour car. It's a Saab, it thinks it's an airplane. It has the key down on the floor for some reason, and it's a Saab, it's Swedish, it's weird, it's cool. It's front wheel drive, I understand, as a few of the other cars on this list are. It's not gonna be everyone's preferred performance platform. I'm sure finding parts for them is getting a lot more difficult, but you can still find Saab 9.3 Viggens for decent prices, although they're getting very difficult to find in the first place. They weren't even that easy to find when they were new. But these are really interesting cars, and they are shockingly fast for what they are. They're definitely a sleeper, and I think they're really cool. But if you think about it, this is a 230 horsepower 2.3 liter 4-cylinder that still gets nearly 30 miles per gallon on the highway, and is a car that could also do 150 miles per hour and could probably smoke a Mustang of its era, which, you know, so could a Town and Country, but still. And you could get it in a convertible, a coupe, or a 4-door sedan, so no matter what your needs are, Saab 3 Viggen can meet them. Unless it's being reliable, I am not sure about that one. Number 3 is one that probably people have heard of, the Subaru SVX. This car was not appreciated in its time. I get it, it was expensive. It was Subaru, not exactly a company that was known for making anything very expensive at the time, and it was not quite the same performance-wise as cars it was competing against, like the 300ZX twin turbo or the 3000 GT VR4, which was also a twin turbo V6. It didn't quite match those cars in performance, though to be fair, it wasn't quite as expensive as those cars either. However, if you take this car and you take the price it originally sold at and adjust it to inflation for modern day, this was like a $60,000 Subaru, and that would kind of surprise people even today. However, that $60,000 Subaru was very luxurious for the time, very unique looking, and very cool. All the early models were all-wheel drive. They did release a front-wheel drive version for later models, but they were not very popular. They just introduced them basically to get the MSRP a little bit lower, and they're very, very cool looking cars. They're decently quick cars. They have a little over 200 horsepower. It's nothing crazy, but they're a flat 6, which is cool. If you like Porsche flat 6s and you can't afford one, first of all, you probably can. Get a 986 Boxster. I know the headlights are ugly, get over it. But if you don't want a 986 Boxster and you want a flat 6, the SVX is a great option. They sound fantastic. They're very cool looking. I've mentioned that a bunch of times. The interior is very of the time, but it's, you know, kind of driver oriented. And the performance is not bad. People also manual swap them, and a lot of people have said that that really brings the performance alive, which I could imagine is most likely true. So that's something you could consider as well. Subaru SVX, interesting car. Number 2 on this list is the Merkur XR4 Ti. You might be thinking, what the heck is that? The Merkur XR4 Ti was essentially, I believe, a Ford Sierra, and they essentially took the Ford Sierra to the United States and for whatever reason at the time badged it as a Merkur, or people pronounce it all the time wrong. Merkur. Technically it's pronounced Merkur. I don't know why, don't ask. But if you can get past the Merkur badge, it's a Ford. If you like Fords, there you go. It's a 2.3 liter 4-cylinder. They don't make a lot of power, but they're very lightweight, they're very cool looking, and I think they're very interesting cars. You can find these still for unbelievably cheap But that is if you can find them. They are very, very rare. But if you've always wanted a Ford Sierra of some sort and you don't want to go through the hassle of importing one, they did sell them in the United States under the Mercor brand, and I think that they are very awesome. I've always wanted one. I think they're super interesting. They apparently handle great, and you know, if you want something that's unique, this is a great option. However, if you want something unique, there is one better option on this list, and it is number one, and it is the Isuzu Impulse RS Turbo. I love these things. They are so cool. They're very funky looking, don't get me wrong. I think the front end of the car looks great. The rear end of the car looks weird. They were sold in the United States both under the Isuzu brand. They were also sold as Geos as the Geo Storm. However, the Geo Storm was never available with the all-wheel drive and turbo option that the Isuzu Impulse RS Turbo offers. The Isuzu Impulse RS Turbo is 160 horsepower turbocharged 4-cylinder. If I'm not mistaken, I believe the all-wheel drive bias is also slightly rear. It's about 60 rear, 40 front, or something like that. And it is such a unique car. Even at the time, for the few magazine reviews that I could find, everyone said that it was super duper raw, to a fault in some ways, because it was not as comfortable on like the highway and things like that, but they all said it was super raw, it was super cool, it was super fun to drive, and 160 horsepower at the time in the 90s was not bad, all things considered. It's also a very unique looking car, there's no getting around that. But the sad thing is, these cars did not sell, and the ones that did were not necessarily kept around or viewed as valuable in any sort of way. And there is like none left. And I mean there is like none left. Try to find one for sale, I dare you. And if you do, please send it to me because I want one so much. They're so interesting. You might remember something that I said I wanted to keep a secret because I wanted to see if I could make it happen in a video a while ago when I said cars that I'd like to build. And I said that there was a rare all-wheel drive JDM car that was very unique and very awesome, but very uncommon, and this is what I was talking about. The Isuzu Impulse RS is an incredibly cool car, and it's just a shame that they're impossible to find. There have been two that have sold within the last couple of years that I could find anywhere. Both of them were on Bring a Trailer. One sold for, I want to say $9,000, the other sold for $12,000. Both were beautiful examples. And I'm sure my bias is coming through, but I love weird cars, and these last two on this list have especially been very close to my heart, and the Isuzu Impulse RS is no different. I would love to own one of these. If you can find one, and it's something you're interested in, snatch it up. If you can find one, and it's not something you're interested in, send it to me, please. The Isuzu Impulse was also sold in other trims. There was the XS, as well as I believe one other. And you know, those were not nearly as fast. Those were front wheel drive and didn't have as much power. Still interesting cars. If you can find a Geo Storm, you don't mind it being front wheel drive and you just want something unique. Front fascia is a little different. I think it's a little uglier, but probably more cohesive looking than the Impulse, but the Impulse is just so unique, and I would love an Impulse RS all-wheel drive. I don't think I can stress that enough, although I already have many, many times. So that's my list of 1 through 10 of cars that failed to sell when they were new that I think are actually very awesome and are something that maybe you should consider if you want something a little bit more unique. And hey, if you enjoyed this list, please let me know in the comments. Share your thoughts on cars that you think are incredibly unappreciated or failed to sell when they were new, that you think should get a little bit more attention, or that you love or you own, whatever it may be. And hey, if you didn't like this video, please let me know in the comments what I can do to improve. You can also leave a dislike, but if you don't leave constructive criticism in the comments, then I don't know what I can do to change, and you'll never be happy, and it's not my fault you got bullied in middle school. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys later. Goodbye!